entering the third week of the Omer, the week of Tiferet. Now, of the 7 weeks of this whole Omer process, this is the one I'm most excited to be teaching about, because this is the one where I had the most profound learning in my own personal life. And in fact, something really hit me about Tiferet, and I had an understanding about it, and it kind of shifted an entire year of my life when I was really taking in this one teaching. And I'll share that teaching in a moment. But first I want to give kind of an overview of what this week is about. So this is not only the third week of the Omer, but it's the one that represents the third of our forefathers. Jacob, the fourth of our forefathers, has never been found. But this is the third and final of the forefathers, Jacob. And he is really, we say, a mix of his father and his grandfather. Whereas Abraham was all about chesed, going out there and giving and giving and giving and loving. And Yitzchak, Isaac, was much more about boundaries and self-control and discipline. Jacob is a combination of the two, and Tiferet is also a combination of the two. If you see that symbol that we have of the tree of life on the start of the videos, you see that chesed is all the way on one side, it's on the right side, Gevor is on the left side, and Tiferet's in the middle. It's the one that is most balanced. I like to say that you can have too much chesed. You can give until you wear yourself down to nothing. You can have too much Gevor where you completely hold back. But you can't have too much Tiferet, because Tiferet is a blending. And it's like I always say, you can have, if you go look for shirts, you can find an extra large, you can find an extra small, you'll never find an extra medium. By its very nature, it is a blending of the two. And therefore, as a blending, it doesn't have a downside. It's only one of the Sfirat that we say does not have a negative side to it, because it is already the blending of these two. So what is the story? What was it that really hit me about this many years ago that just completely changed my perception of this idea of Tiferet? And what happened was, started off innocently enough, a close friend of the family called me up. She was looking to get into the e-commerce space, and that's the space that I happen to work in. And she called and asked me if she could have some advice. And I said, sure. I'm usually very happy to help people, especially people that we're close to, if they can help them build an income for themselves. It's something I'm really excited to do. And she told me she was planning on going into this one particular space. And I went and I analyzed that space a bit. I saw that it was a kind of a more sexy space. It didn't have a tremendous amount of sales that were generated in that space, but it was an exciting area. And so a lot of people were competing in that area. And I saw that it was going to be a highly competitive space, which was going to be very difficult for somebody who was just starting out, who didn't have a lot of the tools, who didn't have a lot of the background to seriously get in there and compete in that space. But fortunately, I happened to know a lot about this person, and I knew she had a very strong background in another area. And I analyzed that area, and it was a less sexy area. And because of that, even though it had a tremendous amount of financial possibilities, there weren't so many competitors in it. And I recommended that, I think you can really thrive here. You can use all of your background, which means you're not going to have to start from scratch and learn this whole area. You really have a tremendously strong foundation. I think you can go in there and really kill it because there's not so much competition, and I think you can really thrive. And she said, okay, well, thank you so much for the advice. Now, is it okay with you if I call you back and ask you for more advice in the future? And I said, sure, I'm happy to help. And so a couple weeks went by, and she called again. And it turned out that she had ignored my advice to go into the space where she had the background in, with less competition. And she had decided instead to go into the heavily competitive area where she had very little background. And the one where I thought that it was going to take a tremendous amount of work and was likely going to fail. And she kept asking me for advice on how she could succeed here. And I tried to give her kind of the best tools that I could, but I found myself growing very frustrated and very short with her. And as the conversation went on, I got more and more impatient, and this became very clear to her that I was impatient, and I wasn't really enjoying being on the phone with her. And at a certain point, she said, well, it's not like I'm calling and asking you for free advice or anything, which was kind of a bizarre thing to say because she was calling and asking for free advice. And I said, well, of course you are. That's exactly what you're doing. Now, I told her she was welcome to call for free advice, but it was strange that she told me, well, I'm not calling you for free advice. And when I said that, that made things more heated, and the conversation ended very poorly. And the energy of that interaction carried over into this relationship that we had with her on a more personal level. And she was someone who used to come to our house for Shabbat a lot, and she stopped coming by. And really, we started growing further and further apart. And I thought back on that. I said, why was I getting so angry with her? Why was I so frustrated? And why had I kind of tanked this whole relationship over this conversation? That I wasn't nice in the way I approached her truthfully. And I realized that what I'd done was that initially, in the first call, I was giving a lot of chesed. I was really happy to be helping her. And all I did was help. And I wasn't looking for anything in exchange at all. And in the second call, I was giving her chesed too. I was trying to help her out because she was a friend and I wanted to help her succeed. But I didn't think she was going to succeed. And I was really kind of feeling that my help, my assistance, was really going to be wasted. My time was going to be wasted. Her efforts were going to be wasted. And I was giving to her, but feeling resentful about it. And at a certain point, really when I shot back at her about how that, well, she was calling for free advice, and why was she doing this and wasting my time, that I was giving a tremendous amount of gevura. Very harsh gevura. Very harsh boundaries. And what had I done? I'd given a lot of chesed, followed by a lot of gevura. And the takeaway I started thinking, what is this concept of Tiferet? Tiferet is a combination of chesed and gevura. But it's not this harsh combination that I'd been giving. Tiferet actually means beauty. And there's nothing beautiful about the combination of chesed and gevura that I'd given to this woman. It was in fact very, very harsh. Really, I'd given chesed to the point that I resented it, and then he came back with, boom, very heavy gevura followed that. And there's nothing beautiful about that process at all. And Tiferet, I realized, needed to be a beautiful blend, because that's what Tiferet is all about. It's about nuance. It's about blending. And it's about finding that place of harmony. And from that point on, I had an entirely different approach when people would come to ask me for advice. The first call would go very similar to the first call with this woman. I'd very gladly give them my advice, usually ask nothing in exchange. But at the end, I would say, by the way, these are the things I advise you to do. I think you should do X, Y, and Z. Now, if you feel that you don't want to do X, Y, and Z, that's perfectly okay. After all, it's your business, it's your life. It's not for me to make that decision. But if you feel that X, Y, and Z are not the steps you'd like to take, then clearly I am not your advisor, and you're not welcome to come back for more advice. But if you do follow X, Y, and Z, if you do follow my path, and you find that my advice is really helpful, then I'm happy to help you more in the future. See, what I started doing was blending some gevura in with my chesed from the very beginning. Just a tiny bit. Like 99% chesed, I was mostly giving this person, but I was also saying, by the way, these are also my boundaries. That I only want to be giving advice in circumstances where it's going to be followed. And if you don't want to follow it, that's your choice, but then don't come back for more. So 99% chesed with a little bit of gevura completely changed the whole interaction. I'd never had a circumstance since where somebody came to me for advice and I felt like I was being used, I felt like I was being manipulated, I felt like I needed to come down with really hard gevura and hard boundaries afterwards, because I'd mixed in a little bit of gevura from the beginning. And I started to realize, well, that's really what Tiferet was about. It wasn't about a lot of chesed followed by a lot of gevura. There's nothing beautiful about that at all. It's about, from step one, having an appropriate amount of gevura mixed in with your chesed. And we say that gevura is one of those things where you don't really want a ton of it. You want it just a little bit to really take that chesed and make it effective and make it something that's healthy for you and healthy for the other person. And that can really be a beautiful thing. And I realize that gevura can't come later. It can't be a lot of chesed followed by a lot of gevura. Chesed given alone is not Tiferet. And nor is chesed followed by gevura going to be Tiferet. To get to that place of Tiferet, it needs to be the combination from the beginning. Tiferet in the beginning, Tiferet in the end, chesed with a little bit of gevura in that place, in a place of balance from step one, and a place of balance throughout. That's when we get to Tiferet. That's when we get to harmony. That's when we get to that balance. And that's when we're really able to take our chesed and our gevura, our giving and our holding back, and really blend them in a completely harmonious way. So that we are giving the best of ourselves in a way that is healthy for ourselves and for others. And we're able to give really what we have to share to the world.